Violence against missionaries was becoming more and more common in the 1890s, and violence against Chinese Christians as well. The Boxers themselves, where did they come from? Their actual name for themselves in Chinese translates as the Fists of Righteous Harmony. They became known as the Boxers because missionaries who observed them engaging in physical exercises that they performed in order to, they thought would help make them impervious to Western bullets and artillery, thought it looked like a Western shadow boxer. And so they started calling them the Boxers, and the name stuck. They kind of came out of a shadowy pedigree. There are various ideas of where the foundation of the Boxers was in terms of previous movements and philosophical thoughts and things like that, but there isn't really any clear evidence that any of that is true. They were first documented in Shandong province in May of 1898, and they quickly gained the support of at least some provincial governors and at least the tacit support of the imperial government. The Empress Dowager knew her army was pretty useless against Westerners, and she spent the money allocated to rebuild her navy after the losses in the war against Japan on the Summer Palace. So she didn't have any navy either. She was anti-foreign. In fact, she hated the foreigners. She and her court did. So she turned to the Boxers to defend China against Western incursions. Now, it was thought that they could summon ancient Chinese spirits, which would help defeat the barbarians. So their success was almost guaranteed. And remember that the Chinese imperial court was also ridden with superstitious beliefs of that kind. It wasn't just the Boxers. So these things kind of melded together to gain imperial support for the Boxers. By 1899, because of the Boxers, much of North China was in anarchy, and marauding Boxers began killing Christians first. Chinese Christians first. They then spread out to start murdering Western missionaries. Chinese Christians and missionaries and Westerners in general were trying to flee from the Boxers, who were drawing closer and closer to Peking. And in Peking, in June, the beginning of June 1900, they murdered a Japanese diplomat as he was on his way conducting business in town in Peking. Foreigners and Chinese Christians were streaming into the legation quarter of Peking, seeking refuge from the Boxers. And troops and civilians from the legations had been making sorties out into town and the surrounding countryside to collect missionaries and other foreigners, Chinese converts, and so forth, and took to just shooting Boxers on sight. The Chinese government gave the foreigners and the legations an ultimatum: either stay and be massacred or leave Peking by June 20th. On June 20th, the German minister in Peking, he was murdered. When news came back that he was murdered, suddenly the people in the legations realized that they really had no choice but to try to stay and fight it out. So they ignored the requirement to leave, and on June 20th, the siege began.